what are some of the common mistakes that business owners make when looking for investment?
That's a very, very interesting question. And it's actually one of the problems that we're looking to resolve because there is something that would call the expectation gap, which exists both on the startup side and on the investor side. You have very often what I call startups pitching on AM and investors listening to FM or vice versa. So it's a gap that's profound where either party tends to expect something from the other side they're not necessarily getting. And it's a gap that we're looking to resolve as quickly as possible. So a few examples. So if I come in as an investor, because I still tend to wear both hats, but mostly the angel investor hat these days. In my earlier years, most definitely the startup entrepreneur looking for funding. And I'm missing a key piece of information as an investor. Sometimes the young startup entrepreneur may not be able to give that to me, at least not within a reasonable period of time. That becomes a red flag, and I tend to shy away, thinking that either they're too slow or that they're ultimately not going to be able to give me this key piece of information that I'm looking for. So another major mistake that I see on the startup side is the ability or the propensity of overstating, of being too optimistic in their financials. In other words, one very common mistake is they size up a market by calculating the total market value and then arbitrarily out of thin air picking up a number saying that within the next 5 years we intend to grab a 5% market share. Mm-hmm. And that number, again, picked out of thin air, doesn't correlate to anything that I'm seeing in the business model. There is no early traction that seems to be indicative of them being able to successfully reach a 1% market share, let alone 5. So they tend to overstate, tend to be overconfident. Now, obviously, you have to be a salesperson, to a certain degree. But at the same time, if you make such a bold statement, you better be sure that you will need to justify it in front of an astute investor. Otherwise, he will send you packing and send you out the door.
Yeah, almost like naivety, right?
Yeah, it's naive. It's overconfidence, and overconfidence in this space doesn't go too far. As an investor today, if one of the first character traits I'm looking for is authenticity, humility, authenticity. They usually go hand in hand. A humble person tends to be an awful lot more authentic than a person who is too cocky, for lack of a better term. And when I see that cockiness, I tend to just move on and say it's probably not a good fit.
Mm. I know there is some advantages to being there early as an investor if it's in the tech space, but it's, I would say, counterintuitive if you're also looking for someone who's maybe got some experience or got some years behind them. How do you weigh that up as an investor?
Yeah, so I am more of a very early stage investor personally. That certainly doesn't fit everyone, which I completely understand. So we typically are only coming in at the seed level or right around the seed level. We very rarely participate in a Series A, let alone a Series B. That's too mature for us. While a lot of funds, both retail and institutional investors, act the other way. They don't touch anything at the seed level because for them it's too risky. In our scenario, the reason why we have a stronger appetite for risk is because we typically intend to fill in the many gaps at the early stage level that a startup usually has to deal with, be it accounting, be it legal, be it on the marketing side, on the sales side. If we identify a strong founding team, strong product market fit, and there is one or the other missing, even if there's no revenue or just very early iteration of revenue traction, that is our sweet spot. But it is our sweet spot as a result of the business model that we have developed, which systematically intends to come in at that early stage and lend a helping hand to the young entrepreneur.
And you can add a lot of value with your team, is that right?
That's correct. The idea is that, in my opinion, a strong team consists of generalists, of specialists, not generalists. As a team builder, I need to build a puzzle. assuming that puzzle has 100 pieces. The last piece I need is another me, especially if I have a gaping hole somewhere else. It's also a mistake that we see very often on both sides. So for example, we see very often a founding team of 3 PhDs in engineering, very heavy in IQ, sometimes lower on the scale in EQ. And one of the first recommendations I make to those guys is like, look, you got to surround yourself with some complementary skill sets other than yours. And vice versa, I see a lot of what I call rah-rah teams, marketing and sales guys that are light on the engineering side or on the product side, and they need to do the opposite.